What kind of fish he calls? That's what I hear. He looks like he's 50 pounds. What do you say, 15 days, milkshake? That's more than 15 days. Handcuffs here. It's like a webcam right there. I didn't even notice that. Hot sauce? Dude, what the hell? Yeah, in the freezer. It's a box. To get in. It's just everything in there is weird. There's webcams all over the place in the basement. I mean, if you go into the bathroom, it'll sit there and... That's weird.
I have no idea. I would have taken him in or something.
You said the last time you saw him was 5:30 this morning?
On July 6, 2022, detectives arrived at Shanda Ramsey's home in Norton Shores after she made a 911 call reporting that her son, Timothy Ferguson, had fallen off the bed and was unresponsive.
My son is not breathing. He's still on hunger strike. I've been checking on him all night because he's feeling good last night, and I woke up feeling so what's this one, and he's not breathing.
What initially seemed like an accident eventually started to look like a horrific plot when the detectives saw Timothy's frail body lying on the floor. And the detectives could never have imagined what they were in for.
The story that she's given is that she last talked to him at 5:30. He's stiff, rigor mortis, like his jaw's starting to lock up. There's no way that she talked to him at 5:30. No way.
I've dealt with hundreds of homicide investigations. I've seen crime scenes. I've seen dead bodies. I've seen everything. And nothing even comes close to this.
Little did the detectives know that soon, sinister clues would start to surface and reveal the true horrors that Timothy went through in his last moments.
The pictures of him in the home and the pictures of him at the autopsy are just haunting.
On the morning of July 6, 2022, Timothy had fallen out of bed and was not responsive. Timothy's older brother Paul, younger brother Gabriel, and Shanda were present at the house when the tragedy occurred. Paramedics and police officers arrived at the scene and were directed to the basement. Paramedics got to work immediately, but it was already too late for Timothy. He was declared dead at the scene. But first responders were suspicious of the scene in front of them. Although it was possible that Timothy could have died from falling off the bed, many things didn't add up. The boy looked severely malnourished, and his clothes appeared too large for his tiny frame. He was also wearing an adult diaper, and his skin had bruises on different parts of his body. There was also a strong odor of urine and feces in the basement. They reported these findings to the officers at the scene as Timothy's body was removed from the house. Outside, officers spoke to Shanda, who was clearly distraught. She told officers that Timothy had gone on a hunger strike when her husband Adam moved out of their home after suffering a stroke in January.
He did this back in, my husband's stroke was January 3rd. So he did this back in, second week of January for almost 3 weeks. And then he ate something last night. I can't remember what it was now, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Shanda explained that Timothy couldn't handle sudden changes and acted up earlier that same year. With the help of her eldest son, Paul, they were able to get his eating back under control. However, this time, she wasn't aware of how bad his health had deteriorated.
He's been wearing really loose clothes the last couple of weeks.
He's really skinny.
He's really skinny, and I didn't notice till this morning because he wouldn't, I asked him if he's okay, and he would not answer me. He's been...
He has autism?
Yeah.
Like a high functioning?
Yeah. I had no clue how bad he was. I tried to check it in the last few days, and he just wouldn't let me anywhere near him. He didn't want a kiss, a hug, nothing.
Probably didn't want you to give him a hug because then you could tell that he was...
I would have known. I told him he was stumbling a little bit last night, but he's not the most coordinated kid in the world. And he said he was okay. And then he ate.
So what was the last time he ate, you think?
Last night.
Shanda mentioned to officers that Timothy avoided any physical affection with her, including hugging, so she hadn't realized his condition. It's only when her youngest son Gabriel saw Timothy coming out of the bathroom did they realize he was starving himself again.
Well, that's why I asked him to eat last night, because his face started looking a little thin. I'm like, okay, enough. And he wouldn't show. I'm like, let me see. Hold your shirt up. And he wouldn't hold his shirt up. He wouldn't do anything.
Did he get real skinny last time too?
Yes. The only reason I know is because my 7-year-old walked in on him accidentally when he was in the shower downstairs. And then my 7-year-old comes up and he's like, Mama, Timothy's really skinny. I was like, oh.
Was that this time or last time?
That was last time. That was like first week of February is when DC discovered that. And I told him he was either going to start eating multiple times a day, or I was taking him to the hospital, and he didn't want to go to the hospital, so he ended
up eating on his own.
Yes.
Police then spoke to Paul about the events leading up to Timothy's death.
And when was the last time you talked to Tim?
Yesterday morning when I was getting him up.
No, yesterday afternoon before you left work. Before I picked you up and took you to work because your e-bike time. You talked to him then.
Yeah. I got off of work at 1
Alright.
this morning.
Has he talked to you recently about his problems at all, or what he's dealing with?
No, he never said his word to me.
Did you guys have normal conversations?
I think the last time we did was before all of this happened. After that,
They literally, because he works a lot, and they...
And sometimes brothers will tell each other what
That's true.
they're not willing to tell their parents.
Why you went on hunger strike? I mean, I'm assuming you...
He didn't even know anything about it, he said, so.
Like Shanda, Paul told officers that Timothy had been known to go on these hunger strikes as a way of acting out against change. Paul's story was similar to Shanda's, but their claims that it repeatedly went on hunger strikes seemed quite bizarre to the detectives. They knew there was more to the story, but they couldn't have ever imagined what it was. With statements taken from both Shanda and Paul, officers began looking through the house and made some disturbing discoveries. In the basement, they found 2 bedrooms and a bunk bed in the common area between the rooms. They quickly surmised that the rooms belonged to Paul and his youngest brother Gabriel, which meant that Timothy slept on the bunk bed in the common area. Officers also searched inside a cupboard in the basement, which was fitted with an alarming camera, and were overcome by the stench of urine and feces. Inside, they found a single blue tarp covering the floor and a cardboard box. In a desk drawer in the basement, officers found a set of metal handcuffs. However, this wasn't even the most disturbing discovery. What the detectives were about to stumble upon would be even more gruesome.
Handcuffs here. It's like a webcam right there. I didn't even notice that. Passwords? Dude, what the hell?
Yeah, in the freezer. It's a box. And a key to get in.
It's just everything in there is weird. There's webcams all over the place in the basement. I mean, if you go into the bathroom, it'll sit there and... That's weird.
As shocking as it was to find a bottle of hot sauce among the bath products on the counter, it wasn't the most disturbing thing the detectives found. The search of the basement bathroom revealed even more disturbing discoveries. The floor was littered with used adult diapers, and another motion sensor camera pointed toward the shower, which didn't have a curtain to separate it from the rest of the room. These strange discoveries prompted officers to apply for a search warrant to review the camera footage and cell phone records of both Shanda and Paul. An autopsy was performed on Timothy the following day, given the suspicious nature of his death. On the examination table, Timothy's tiny frame shocked the medical examiner. For his height of 5'6" Timothy's weight of just 69 pounds was half the average weight of a boy his age. The medical examiner discovered that Timothy died of dehydration, malnutrition, and hypothermia. Timothy's death was ruled a homicide.
He didn't just become 69 pounds overnight. He got that way over an extended period of time. And he got that way because the people, or primarily the person who was supposed to care for him, wasn't doing that.
With this new information, it was evident that Timothy had been neglected and left to waste away. But Shanda and Paul both remained tight-lipped throughout the investigation when asked if Timothy was abused. They stuck to their original story, claiming that Timothy died because of his hunger strike. With Shanda and Paul not uttering a word, detectives had to turn to the only other witness who was present in the house, Timothy's stepbrother, Gabriel. And when Gabriel started talking, detectives finally learned what horrors truly went on in Shanda's house.
I recall that day actually quite vividly. I was just getting ready to sit down to dinner, and I got a call from a friend of mine. She had conducted the interview with the minor child who was in the home, and she called me because she was just absolutely floored. She just could not believe what she was hearing.
Gabriel had been in the house with Timothy and must have seen what truly happened to Timothy. Gabriel could very well be the key to solving the case.
You said you don't want to talk about Timothy and your mom?
I don't want to talk about those two because bad boys with mamas do not mix.
They are asking questions in such a way as to elicit a truthful response. And in every regard, G's answers to those questions sort of checked the boxes for her so that she believed that he was being honest about it and talking about this basically a house of horrors that was going on inside the home.
And as the interview with Gabriel went on, more and more terrifying details about the horrors Timothy faced at the hands of Shanda and Paul came to light.
What would he do to be a bad boy?
Like, talk to me, try to sneak food, try to sneak some water. And one of his punishments, where every time he did a bad boy thing, he gets a dose of hot sauce. A hot spicy sauce.
Yeah. And you said to me, so who decided what the punishments were gonna be?
Mama.
Everything was monitored, everything was measured, everything was controlled by her down to what he was eating.
Do you guys have a camera in your house?
Yes, we have some cameras.
Okay, what are the cameras for?
They're for watching Timothy before he died today. And Mama would be on the cameras and watch Timothy hard as she can, even if she gets tired. But the one she's no longer tired of watching him, she watches him again.
The interviewer listened carefully while Gabriel talked about the joy Shanda felt out of abusing Timothy and then watching the recordings of those from the cameras. But this wasn't all. According to Gabriel, Timothy's death could have been the result of one of Shanda's final punishments for Timothy.
You said you thought some punishments were the reason Timothy died.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think this one was one of them because it was uncomfortable. But over time, I think he had to do this in his small room.
With Gabriel's chilling testimony, the detectives geared up to build a case against Shanda and Paul. But they needed something stronger than an 8-year-old's word. And that break came through when the detectives successfully acquired a search warrant for Shanda's home and began looking through video footage from the basement of the Van der Ark home.
I didn't really check this one.
As it turns out, the camera that was in the closet actually did have a tiny micro SD card in it. I don't know if they just didn't realize that it was in there and didn't remove it and didn't destroy it, but for whatever reason, it was still in that camera when it was seized by the police. So we ultimately did get video footage from inside that closet.
In the video, police watched as Shanda placed Timothy on the tarp inside the basement cupboard. Timothy was seen wearing only a shirt and an adult diaper. There was also audio recorded of the interaction between the mother and son. Police heard Shanda admonish Timothy for his misbehavior. They then watched in horror as Shanda returned 15 minutes later and scolded Timothy about breathing through his mouth. The boy already appeared to be unresponsive. Shanda then covered his mouth and called him a d for not breathing correctly through his nose. Shanda proceeded to hold her hand over his mouth, and eventually Timothy stopped breathing altogether. This was enough proof for the police to issue a warrant of arrest for Shanda. On the morning of July 8, 2022, Shanda was arrested and charged with first-degree murder and child abuse.
You're going to be charged with child abuse right now. I believe it's the first or second degree. So it is a felony. So you won't be able to get out of jail until you see the judge, until all the warrant paperwork's down there, okay? Which will probably be tomorrow. All right.
Sorry.
No, I'm the bearer of bad news right now. Yeah, it's been a bad couple days.
Had 6 months. I had a stroke 6 months.
Nope, you're all right. I do have to handcuff you, but I'll do it in the front.
If my blood sugar crashes, I need that.
Are you diabetic?
I'm reactive hypoglycemic.
Okay. You take medication for that?
No. I have a service dog normally, but I didn't bring him.
Yeah.
For good reason.
All right. I can let you have that all the way up until the jail.
A virtual hearing was held at the county court. The judge ordered that Shanda be held without bail as she posed a flight risk.
The denial of food to the child, feeding the child nothing but bread, and bread soaked in hot sauce, pouring hot sauce down the child's throat, and placing the child in a bath, which we believe will be the explanation ultimately for why the child had suffered hypothermia, and that most notably happened the day before the child passed away.
The judge ultimately denied her bond, leaving Vander Ark in a Muskegon County jail tonight.
This court has grave concerns, not only about the safety and well-being of the community, but also regarding the ability of the defendant to flee.
While Shanda remained behind bars, Paul took to social media to share his concerns about the investigation.
Hey everybody, just figured I'd send a quick check for y'all, but we're doing good right now. I just dozed off on the couch unintentionally, and I forgot to give a quick check for today, but yeah. Oh, when I can't actually get in contact with you guys, I'll probably post a quick check like this. For those of you who aren't aware, my little brother has passed away, and my mother is currently in the custody of, well, I'm not sure if it's a lot to deal with, but right now we're doing good. We're fine.
But the investigation was not quite over. In the week following Shanda's arrest, police obtained the family's phone records and investigated the video footage collected from the house. The text messages exchanged between Shanda and Paul revealed an alarming series of events. Shanda and Paul had been working together to inflict various forms of punishment on Timothy for months. It was revealed through these messages that Paul had carried out much of the maltreatment as directed by Shanda. There were messages which showed how Paul had complained about Timothy's behavior. Some messages also showed how Paul asked for direction in punishing Timothy and even made suggestions for punishments. Some of these punishments included feeding Timothy bread covered in hot sauce, forcing him to throw up food he wasn't allowed to eat, and even pouring hot sauce directly into Timothy's mouth and on his privates when he didn't listen to orders. Armed with the new evidence, Paul was arrested about a week later and was interrogated by police. During his interrogation, he admitted to lying to police about Timothy's death on the orders of his mother, Shanda, and that the hunger strike story was false.
So tell me what really happened in the morning then, because obviously what was told to us wasn't the truth. What really happened? When you guys, somebody found him, or...
I woke up and I had been grabbing my shoes, and it was at that point that it basically all played out like we said. The whole morning thing was exact. He wasn't breathing in the closet. It was the closet though. We had to get him out of the closet to try and resuscitate.
So it's you and your mother that tried to get him out of the closet?
We did get him out. We tried to resuscitate.
Who noticed him first? You or
my mother?
Did she have asked you via text to check on him on the way up? That's not what happened. She said, hey, can you check on him on your way upstairs? You remember that text message at all?
No.
Okay.
There might have been one that I didn't see, but
Okay. So you guys pull him out of the club.
we tried to resuscitate him. We gave him rescue breaths. His breath smelled horrible. I thought maybe he might have still been capable of being resuscitated, but his mouth was still wet.
Yeah.
Paul also told the officers that he loved Timothy and explained that he'd tried to tell his mother that they should consider taking Timothy to a hospital for treatment. But this sudden emotion for Timothy on Paul's face seemed like an act. Detectives were sure Paul was hiding the full truth, and so they cornered him into revealing some shocking secrets.
I loved him so much.
Yeah, I can tell that. I can certainly tell that.
That's
your brother.
Yeah.
That's June 13th, less than a month ago. You sent this picture to her, and you said, he's looking like a skeleton, we need to give him more food. But you guys didn't give him more food over the next couple weeks. You guys gave him less and more punishment, and less bread, and more bread with hot sauce. That's what really happened. You reached out to her and said, this is scary looking, right? You probably thought, he can barely walk. You sent a picture of his legs, right? You sent this picture of his legs to your mother, right here. You sent this to her. And what'd you say? Something along the lines of, no wonder he can barely stand up or walk. Look at that. And your mother, being smart and intelligent and the smartest woman in the room, she didn't do anything about that? Didn't think about taking him to the doctor? Didn't think about, we have to give him some more food, like seriously now? Instead, what do you think she did? She gave him less and more punishment. Until what? He ends up dead. And what did she tell the police? He was always wearing baggy clothes, so I didn't notice anything until last night. Another just blatant lie. Another blatant lie. If this was all an accident, why would she lie to us?
During further questioning, Paul explained to officers that Shanda had installed two-way speakers in the house and sometimes directed Paul over the speakers about the various punishments that he could enact on Timothy. Paul then admitted to the officers that the day before Timothy died, the boy was punished and forced to take a 9-hour ice bath. This answered the question of how hypothermia contributed to Timothy's death. Paul was charged with first-degree child abuse and held on bail of $500,000. He opted to take a plea deal and agreed to testify against Shanda at her hearing for a reduced sentence. Both Shanda and Paul remained in custody until her trial began on December 13, 2023. As per his plea deal agreement, Paul took the stand as a witness for the prosecution. Paul testified against Shanda, telling the court how she was the ringleader and he simply followed her orders when torturing Timothy. He was asked about Timothy's health and appearance when he first came to live with them in Michigan. Paul admitted that Timothy appeared to be healthy and perhaps a bit chubby at the beginning. He then explained that following Adam's stroke and subsequent move to Florida in January 2022, Shanda had started locking the pantry and monitoring Timothy's food intake. From the moment Paul took the stand, more details about the gruesome Timothy faced at the hands of Shanda came to light.
Can you describe what was happening at that time and how he was restricted from getting access to food?
He was sneaking food that was not necessary at that time, and it was solved by placing locks on the fridge, freezer, and pantry.
When we say he was sneaking food that wasn't necessary, who would make that determination that it wasn't necessary?
Shanda.
At some point, were you instructed to do something with him because he wouldn't wake up?
Put him in an ice bath.
And did you do that?
Yes.
How did you get him from the closet to the bathroom with the...
I had to drag him.
Was your mother giving you instructions on what to do with him while he was in that tub then, at that point in time?
Yes, sir.
What was she telling you to do?
Make him uncomfortable.
You said that you were supposed to make sure that he stayed uncomfortable. How were you supposed to make him uncomfortable in a night bath?
Put his body at an odd angle that was not a comfortable position to be in.
When he was in the tub, when he tried to rest his head somewhere?
On his shoulder, yes. Or the lip of the tub.
Is that allowed?
No.
During the testimony, Paul told the court that Shanda had also stopped giving Timothy his medication when he moved in with them in May 2021. He also mentioned that Shanda had stopped taking Timothy to see a doctor for his regular checkups and for other illnesses. Paul testified that Timothy was homeschooled and wasn't allowed to leave the house or interact with anyone outside the family. On the stand, Paul denied the alleged hunger strike and admitted it was a fabricated story developed by him and Shanda to explain Timothy's malnourished appearance.
When did you next become aware that something was happening with Timothy?
The next morning,
They go into the closet basically to wake him up, and obviously he's deceased at that point. Do you remember what your mother said when you asked her if we should call 911?
she said no.
Was there some discussion about a hunger strike?
Yes.
What was the discussion about the hunger strike at that point?
Shanda said to say that he'd gone on a hunger strike.
Where's
That we found him on the bed.
Seems obvious, but who is she referring to?
Timothy.
Paul's testimony continued as he gave a more detailed account of what punishments he or Shanda would administer to Timothy. One such type of punishment included making Timothy run up and down the patio area. Text messages exchanged between Paul and Shanda were read out in court, revealing that Shanda had wanted Paul to chase Timothy to make the punishment more difficult.
Was there ever some physical discipline that was involved with him being outside as well?
Yes.
What was that discipline?
He was made to run up and down the patio stairs.
And those are stairs in the back of your house?
Yes, sir.
Are those visible at all from the front of the house?
No, sir.
Visible to anyone walking by on the street or driving by, anything of that nature?
No, sir.
There are some text messages referenced in there where there's a discussion about doing the stairs chasing style. What is that, if you remember?
Following close behind him to ensure he moves faster.
And who would be the one that would chase him if that was taking place?
I had to.
Timothy had also been subjected to cleaning the garage while only wearing a diaper so that he didn't mess up the floor. Paul admitted that the cameras were placed in the basement so that he and Shanda could monitor Timothy and see if he was completing the punishments given to him by either of them.
Police have indicated at the time they searched her residence, there were a number of cameras seized, as well as some other items. So let's talk about the cameras first. What was the purpose of the cameras being inside the residence?
To watch Timothy.
And who would be watching Timothy on those cameras?
My mother, or when she couldn't, she had me do so.
And how is it that you would, kind of explain for the jury if you can, how is it that you watched the cameras so you could watch what Timothy was doing?
I would log into the app on my phone, and it would alert me if there was a motion movement.
So you had you had your phone and you had some type of app on there that was connected to those cameras?
Several, yes.
And you said that you were also alerted to movement. Were there motion sensors in the home?
Yes, and the cameras also had that feature as well. They activated on motion.
And what was the restriction on Timothy's movement that would cause those cameras to go off? Where was he limited to?
Could you please reiterate?
Yeah. Where is it that, where could Timothy go, basically?
Mainly he was restricted to the downstairs area, to a closet downstairs.
These punishments included doing wall sits for hours or kneeling in front of a wall for hours on end. If Timothy ever faltered or his position shifted, Shanda would increase the duration of the punishment to make up for breaking the rules. Paul then told the court that Timothy was sometimes handcuffed or zip-tied to restrict his movements, and an alarm was placed on his belt in case he moved without permission. Timothy's use of the bathroom was also monitored by both Paul and Shanda and was severely dealt with if he overstayed his turn. Paul revealed that Timothy was punished if he'd had an accident before using the bathroom, despite using a diaper at all times. When asked about the hot sauce punishment, Paul told the court that Timothy was regularly forced to eat hot sauce without being given any water. Sometimes he'd be fed bread soaked in hot sauce before being allowed to eat normal bread 30 minutes later.
We've seen a lot of text messages and references to hot sauce and hot sauce retrieved from the home. At some point in time, were you asked to start feeding him bread with hot sauce on it?
Yes.
And who asked you to do that?
Shanda.
Why were you giving him bread with hot sauce on it?
Because he was supposedly misbehaving.
And how would you
Can you describe to the jury what you would do to do that and to make him eat the bread with hot sauce?
I would put it on bread, have him stand in the kitchen area near the back door and watch him eat until he finished.
And was he required to eat it until it was all gone?
Yes, sir.
Did it ever look like he wanted to eat the bread with hot sauce?
No.
Were there times where you were told that he could have something besides bread with hot sauce on it if he ate the bread with hot sauce first?
Regular bread, yes.
So he had to eat that bread with hot sauce first, and then he could have some regular bread?
Yes.
Did he have to wait a period of time before he could eat the regular bread, though?
Yes, sir.
What, do you remember about what that was? About how long?
30 minutes?
With taking the bread out of the equation, was hot sauce used in some other fashion as a form of discipline for him?
It was directly into his mouth.
And who would do that?
Me or Shanda, me under her orders.
And it's just like what you sound like? How did you do that?
Had him open his mouth and put it in.
There were also times when Paul was instructed to feed Timothy hot sauce directly. Paul admitted that during a text conversation with Shanda, she'd toyed with the idea of dropping hot sauce over Timothy's privates. At the end of his testimony, the prosecution team questioned Paul about his change of heart. He admitted to being concerned after seeing Timothy getting weak. Paul had sent Shanda pictures of Timothy and suggested that they take him to a doctor. Paul confessed to feeling sorry for Timothy and making him a peanut butter and jelly sandwich and some scrambled eggs with cheese.
Did he ever eat any normal type of meal leading up to his death after you took that photo and sent it to your mother?
That day I made him an actual real meal, an actual peanut butter and jelly sandwich, as well as scrambled some eggs and put cheese in them.
Did you tell your mother you'd made that meal for him?
No, sir.
Why not?
Because I didn't want her to be upset with me.
He'd hid this from Shanda so that he wouldn't get into trouble. He admitted that he only followed his mother's instructions because he looked up to her as a role model in his life. He worshipped her to an extent. In order to keep himself from getting convicted, Paul not only put the whole blame on Shanda, but he also portrayed himself as another victim of hers. But was this going to work?
I suppose I didn't love him enough.
No,
That's why I'm trying to bring justice for him.
Just a moment. I don't know.
But can I say that I loved him during the time before his death?
Yes. Did you love him before his death?
With all the ways I acted, I cannot.
Okay.
Unfortunately.
Let me ask you this. When did you start feeling this way? While he was alive or after you found out that the way he was being treated killed him?
After?
So while the time he was alive, did you think you were killing him?
No.
Shanda was the next to take the stand. Her defense team argued that Shanda showed signs of dissociation due to post-traumatic stress she suffered after her husband Adam's stroke. Her attorney also told the court that Shanda suffered from blackouts and memory loss and would most probably not fully remember some of the information presented during her testimony. The prosecution, though, didn't believe this tactic. When asked about why a doctor hadn't seen Timothy, Shanda said that her ex-husband had not given her Timothy's medical card in order for him to receive medication and treatment. It seems Shanda had an answer for every question posed to her.
And cameras in your home, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And the impression from the testimony I heard is that it was for the sole purpose of ensuring that Timothy could not get to food. Is that accurate?
No.
Why did you have all those monitors and cameras in your home?
When Timothy came to live with us, his stepmother informed me that they had motion sensors. They weren't as tech savvy as I was. I worked in tech before law school. I worked in tech support for several years. But they had motion sensors and she told me that she didn't sleep at night. She only slept when he was at school because he was into everything. And so because my younger child, he used to, when he was about 2, he would take all his clothes off. So we started putting a camera in his room. And then once we moved to the Marshall Road location, it was bi-level. My husband was born with a disability. My husband was wheelchair bound. So we had an extra wheelchair that we kept on the upper level. That's where the master bedroom was. But that way, if little man, if G was down in his bedroom, my husband could talk to him through the camera and have him come up. It was much easier. My husband could crawl down the steps before the stroke, but we didn't want him to have to crawl up and down those steps.
Okay.
When questioned about why there were locks on the fridge in the pantry, Shanda explained that Timothy was eating a large amount of food, including bacon, beef, and uncooked chicken nuggets.
He stopped. He started eating again.
He started eating again, so then you decided he's been on a hunger strike, he's eating again, so now we better lock up the food.
No, I did the locks to protect him because he could put himself eating the chicken nuggets. I didn't put the locks on after he did the hamburger or the bacon, but the chicken nuggets, it was raw chicken.
Chicken nuggets are cooked, aren't they? They're pre-cooked.
Are they? I didn't even think about that.
When cross-examined, Shanda claimed to have no memory of sending many of the texts that investigators had found.
Mr. Johnson asked you if you remember the text about, honestly, tell me if you think this is all fake. Remember that?
Vaguely.
You vaguely remember that text?
Yes, sir.
So you can remember the text where it tries to provide you with a defense to this, but you can't remember any of the horrible things that you did to Timothy. Is that your testimony here today?
I don't have any control over what I can remember and what I don't, sir.
She refused to acknowledge responsibility for Timothy's death. While on the stand, though, Shanda admitted to lying about feeding Timothy the night before he died or threatening him with a hospital visit if he didn't start eating again. When confronted about the hot sauce punishment, Shanda told the prosecutor that she couldn't imagine having sent such a message to Paul. When asked about her reasoning and logic behind keeping Timothy awake as a form of punishment, Shanda said that she wanted him to know how it felt to be kept awake when he wanted to sleep.
Punishments, and I guess this 3 o'clock in the morning one about not letting him sleep or he gets an ice bath, so he's got to be awake at 3 o'clock in the morning. You said that was because he would keep you guys up in the middle of the night or wake you up in the middle of the night?
Yes.
And again, you did really well on the logic and reasoning portion of the LSAT exam. Can you explain the reasoning behind keeping somebody awake when they're keeping you awake?
To show them how it feels.
But they're already awake, aren't they?
It made sense to me, sir. Now that you ask it, but it doesn't seem to make sense, but it made sense to me at the time.
You didn't actually mean that as punishment. That was just out of spite. You were just angry with Timothy for keeping you awake, weren't you?
No, it was meant as a punishment, sir.
But it's also a punishment for yourself because you have to stay awake as well, don't you?
I don't sleep much anyway, but yes, sir.
Or Paul has to stay awake, right?
Yes, sir. Paul's an insomniac as well.
The prosecutor then questioned Shanda about her claim of giving Timothy a hot bath the night before he died. To prove that Shanda was lying about knowing Timothy's condition, the prosecutor presented her with his autopsy images.
You testified that you gave Timothy a warm bath the night before he passed away, that last night, July 5th. Do you recall that?
Yes, sir.
That was the first time you've told anybody connected to this case that you'd done that, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
You never told the police officers you did that, did you?
No, sir.
I imagine a warm bath sounds just like, it's just what it sounds like, right? You got him, you took him to the bath, you brewed a warm bath for him, and you put him in the bathtub, right?
Yes, sir.
This is hours before he dies, right?
Yes, sir.
You look like that when you put him in the bathtub?
I'm sorry.
Gotta make me a moment.
After looking at the images before, Shanda held her hand to her mouth and proceeded to get sick while on the stand. The judge then called for an end to the day's proceedings following the incident. The next day, the trial continued without Shanda as her defense team explained that she'd fallen ill the day before. The judge allowed for the trial to continue as the investigation team presented their evidence to the jury. While Shanda's emotional response to these images might have helped her score some sympathy points from the jury, the next and the strongest piece of evidence presented by the prosecution wiped all of Shanda's hopes away. A detective took the stand and described a recorded footage of Shanda torturing Timothy in his final moments.
Did it record any audio from Miss Vander Ark as she was pulling Timothy into the closet and positioning him on the floor?
It did. I could hear Miss Vander Ark tell Timothy that he is pathetic, and then adds, but I already knew that as she was dragging him in. He can be seen, his chest rising, lowering very slightly, small little movements, and then there is a point in time where you stop seeing that, and his body just kind of relaxes, and it appears to me that he has died at that point.
The video had not been shown in court due to it creating a biased or prejudiced opinion of the defendant. Investigators told the court that the video evidence that showed Timothy's final moments and the role that Shanda played in ending his life. It was described in detail how Shanda dragged Timothy into the cupboard and laid him on the tarp hours before he died. Investigators also told the jury how 18 minutes before the police were called, audio recordings picked up the conversation between Shanda and Paul. The entire audio captured the exact plan that hatched between the pair to explain Timothy's poor health due to his recent hunger strike.
Yeah, I don't. I just want to make it look like he's in that bed. No, I don't. I'm on your line. Yeah.
Investigators reiterated that it was both Paul and Shanda who created an elaborate plan to hide the suffering that Timothy endured at their hands.
Count 1, charging open murder involving the death of Timothy Ferguson. We find her guilty of first-degree felony murder. Count 2, first-degree child abuse. We find her guilty of first-degree child abuse.
On December 15th, 2023, even though Shanda was not present, the jury deliberated for only an hour before finding Shanda guilty of open murder and first-degree child abuse. On December 21st, 2023, Paul pleaded guilty to first-degree child abuse. On January 24th, 2024, Shanda was sentenced to life in prison for the murder of Timothy Ferguson and will serve her sentence at the Women's Huron Valley Correctional Facility. At Shanda's sentencing, Timothy's other siblings, Nolan and Millie, spoke about how they felt about Shanda and her disgusting actions.
If I can't have my brother back, she shouldn't have her freedom back. And lastly, I want everyone to know that to those who knew him, even that wouldn't feel like justice.
I want the woman who killed my little brother to face the highest punishment possible. I want her detained for the rest of her life so she can't hurt anyone else.
Judge Matthew Cassell spoke directly to Shanda about her horrific actions.
I'm not going to let you hide in the darkness anymore. People know what you are now. They know what you did. You're not able to hide in the darkness anymore. Timothy won. And he won because we know what you did to him now. It's not hidden anymore. We know who you are. That's the way that I'm going to honor him. You don't win because justice, thank God, in this case prevailed. I can't even imagine if you had been able to resuscitate him. He'd be still suffering. So if there's anything I'm grateful for would be that he finally passed away so you couldn't continue to torture him. You did.
On February 26, 2024, Paul Ferguson was set to learn his fate. Judge Matthew Cassell also presided over his hearing. Paul asked the judge to show mercy and told him that he would never feel better because Timothy was gone.
I asked the judge for nothing more than mercy and fairness, to offer me compassion so I might learn from him. I only hope to better myself in the coming days and serve my time with what little honor I have left, and to make right my faults in search of a better tomorrow.
Judge Cassell remarked that Paul only felt sorry because he got caught.
The court is concerned that Mr. Ferguson will not get the help he needs in prison. I think he's one step away from becoming a psychopath like his mother. And the court is concerned that he represents a danger to the public. That if released, he would represent a significant danger to the public. Mr. Ferguson, I think you are a product of your environment, but I don't believe you that you're sorry. I don't. I don't think you have empathy. I don't think you have any emotion whatsoever. And that's what scares the court. It really scares me. I think you're sorry that you're here. I think you're sorry you got caught. Based on all that, the sentence of the court, you serve 30 years to 100 years, Michigan Department of Corrections. Credit for 592 days you've already served.
Paul was sentenced to 30 to 100 years in prison for first-degree child abuse and will start his sentence at the Charles E. Eagler Reception and Guidance Center while awaiting prison placement. It's the symptom of a depraved society when children can't find security with those that were meant to protect them from the dangers of the world. It's heartbreaking to think that Timothy, who was already dealt a cruel hand by life, was subjected to such horror at the end. So today, we welcome your opinions on the case of Timothy Richard Ferguson. How did no one recognize the danger in Shanda? How does a mother watch her child waste away without remorse? Let us know in the comments section below. If you found today's video interesting, please consider subscribing to M7 Crime Storytime, hit the like button, and share our videos with other crime aficionados. Also, if you have any crime story that you'd like us to cover, leave us a message in the comments section below. Until next time, stay safe.